Prince Vegeta, once a prideful, arrogant alien royalty, now a loving father and all but human. Throughout the initial 520 chapter run of Dragon Ball, many people consider Vegeta to be the best written character, and for good reason too. The journey that Vegeta takes through the original run is one of the most iconic and well-represented redemption arcs in all of fiction. But what exactly is it that sets Vegeta apart from the rest? Why, of all the enemies turned friend in Dragon Ball, is Vegeta's journey towards the title of hero so revered, while the others seem to be background in the minds of many fans? That's exactly what we're going to try and find out today as we explore the life and times of the throneless heir, Prince Vegeta. We don't see a whole lot of Vegeta's childhood, the only glimpse being a questionably canon anime-exclusive training session with the ruthless Cybermen. As we see when they crop up in the current time, a Cyberman will stop at nothing to claim victory, even resorting to self-destruction if it means taking out an opponent. A newborn Cyberman was even able to kill Yamcha, who, while commonly made fun of in the fandom, at the time he was considered one of the strongest humans on the planet, stronger than characters who are easily planetary in strength. When you lean back and take a look at the true scope of these characters, a Cyberman is really nothing to scoff at. And remember, these are the opponents that Vegeta is made to face as a child. This one scene really isn't much to go off, but it provides some insights into the conditions that Vegeta must have endured growing up, being the prince of a space-faring pirate warrior nation under the foot of the Emperor of the Universe. Training and strength will always be his highest priority, even at this point in his life. Day in and day out, he's fighting life or death battles against foes far outside the scope of what someone his age should realistically be able to handle. If this is an accurate representation of his daily life, it's clear to see how this kind of relentless childhood could breed the maniacal elitism that haunts his character going forward. When we're properly introduced to Vegeta for the first point in the timeline, he's one of 4 living individuals from his race. 3 that he knows about, right back up to 4 if Tarball is still considered canon. As far as Vegeta knows at this point, a stray meteor destroyed his home planet while the entire race was gathered there, the only survivors being him, Nappa, Raditz, who was already killed by the first time we see him, and Raditz's younger brother Kakarot, also known as Son Goku. Upon Raditz's death, and using the communication feature of the Frieza Force's Scouter, Vegeta finds out about magical wish orbs known as Dragonballz residing on the planet that Kakarot was sent to as a baby, Earth. Vegeta gets the bright idea to go to Earth and use these Dragonballz to wish for immortality. When you start to take a look at how Vegeta got where he is, it starts to make a lot more sense that this is what he would wish for. Vegeta is one of the last of his race, and from his perspective, he's the only one worthy of continuing the Saiyan bloodline. We see later on during Dragon Ball Super that he is very well learned about Saiyan history too, meaning that the preservation of his people and of their history must have been to the utmost priority to him. So for someone like Vegeta to wish for immortality, that's actually the most selfless act that someone as narcissistic as early Vegeta is capable of. Not only is he making this wish so that he can preserve the Saiyan history, but he also intends to free the remnants of his people from the shackles of Lord Frieza. Would he most likely have taken over the Frieza Force for himself? Probably. Again, I said this is the most selfless act he's capable of, not that it is a selfless act. Yes, Vegeta is a villain, and a dastardly one at this point especially, but his selfishness and overall motivation are born of the environment he grew up in, and given the chance to live under different circumstances, he could have ended up as a far better person, as evidenced by his twisted sense of selflessness. While he acts incredibly selfish, you can tell from diving into the hidden motivations of that selfishness that the preservation of both the self and the weight of his entire people. Even now, while he's intended to just be a straight-up evil villain, there's a good person somewhere within him that just never got the chance to grow and overpower his harsh exterior. The conditions he had to face growing up in the Frieza Force simply didn't provide the space for that kind of personality trait to grow. Maybe Vegeta could have even been a kind person from the very beginning if he had been given the chance. Upon their arrival, Vegeta and Nappa confront the Earth's defense force, sans Goku. Vegeta sends out Nappa and a small group of Cybermen to utterly decimate them. Nappa alone managed to kill Piccolo, Tien, and Chiaotzu, and one of the Cybermen killed Yamcha. But before he could finish off Gohan and Krillin, Goku appeared and quickly dispatched of Nappa. An important note is that Goku's Kaioken assault left Nappa paralyzed, making him unable to fight moving forward. Vegeta, being absolutely ruthless at this point, decided to kill him since he has no use for a Saiyan who can't fight. This heartless decision is a result of the elitism that his upbringing instilled within him, and perhaps even a product of his own insecurity. Because he was forced to become so strong at such a young age, Vegeta derives much of his self-worth from that strength. And in order to justify that kind of self-deprecating behavior, he makes a conscious effort to enforce that worldview onto others, leading him to look down on those weaker than him, i.e. Nappa in that moment and the Z-Fighters. Effectively, he is projecting the worldview that was forced upon him to the rest of the world in order to satisfy the status quo that he's been indoctrinated to think is the only way of the world. Which of course leads us into Vegeta's legendary first showdown against Son Goku. This fight is easily one of my favorite in not only Dragon Ball Z, not only the entire Dragon Ball franchise, but out of any fictional fight to ever exist, and that is because there is not a single instance of wasted motion. In the manga especially, every action taken on both sides serves to further develop and contrast their personalities and worldview perfectly, especially when you pay attention to the position that each of them stand in relation to one another throughout the fight, which is used to wordlessly encapsulate both characters' status in relation to one another at several different points. Just before the fight begins, as Vegeta attempts to recruit Goku to his cause, he's standing above Goku, talking down to him and refusing to call him anything but his Saiyan name, whereas Goku not only stands on a lower platform initially, but the initial battle stance he takes puts himself even lower than Vegeta when you look at them side by side. This dichotomy perfectly encapsulates Vegeta's mindset going into the fight. He sees himself as so effortlessly above Goku in every way. While he may have overpowered Nappa, that doesn't necessarily mean he'll stand a chance at taking down Vegeta himself, given his status as a Saiyan Elite. Fun fact, Vegeta is only ever referred to as a Saiyan Elite during the Saiyan Saga, which means that him being the Prince of all Saiyans is actually a retcon that was made later on. At this point, as far as Vegeta knows, based on pure genetics, it should be impossible for any of the currently living Saiyans to be stronger than him. He has to believe that it works that way. Otherwise, he might not be worthy of the weight of his entire race that he's been made to hold. Utilitarian would not be an inappropriate term to use to describe Vegeta at this point in his life, and no moment shows that better than him asking Goku to replace Nappa as his second hand. From his point of view, he had one level of power under his control, and a far stronger one just showed up. He's simply replacing one number with a bigger number. The next section of dialogue takes place a little after the first few attacks have been thrown. During this initial flurry, no significant damage is dealt, but Goku proves that he can hold his own in this fight. He's planted the seeds of doubt in Vegeta's mind, but a narcissist won't stand idly by as they're proven wrong, especially when all the cards have yet to be revealed. Most importantly, as this conversation happens, the two are flying on the same level as one another. Vegeta's misconception of being effortlessly stronger than Goku has already proven to be untrue. Yes, he may be stronger, but it's not the foregone conclusion that he initially believed. Either way, Vegeta hasn't gone all out yet, and Goku still has to use his Kaioken technique to keep up, which isn't sustainable for him. While it may appear that they're equal in strength, Vegeta still believes that he has the upper hand. As the fight continues, Vegeta becomes even further distressed by the fact that he can't put Goku down, so in a rage-driven gambit, he threatens to destroy the entire Earth should Goku not stop his Gallic Gun attack. He no longer cares about the Dragonballz. At this point, the mentality he's carried through his entire life is what's being challenged, and all he can think about is proving that he hasn't been wrong his whole life. He needs to prove that there truly isn't a world where the weak have any value, because that would mean that his entire life up to this point has been wasted. Interestingly, in this action, Goku is literally, physically put as the only standing thing between the Earth and complete destruction. And in the first moment of Vegeta being directly overpowered by another Saiyan in his entire life, Goku pushes through to Kaioken ×4 and blasts Vegeta into the stratosphere. Upon his return, Vegeta decides that he must rely on the Great Ape form that he feels to be so barbaric. At this point, all other pretense has just faded away, and Vegeta is desperate to defeat Goku and prove to himself that his worldview is right. If he can crush the little Saiyan, he can put this all behind him as dumb luck and go on with his mentality unchallenged. Vegeta is the rightful prince of all Saiyans, and the strongest one at that. It's what he's always believed. As a slave to the Frieza Force, it's all he has. He can't lose this part of himself because it's all that's kept him sane through that slavery. Unfortunately for Vegeta's mental status quo, the Great Ape form isn't enough to put Goku and his friends down for good. He had Goku in his grasp, dead to rights. But before he could finish off this stain on his reputation, his tail was cut off by a lowly human, and not even a notably strong one at that. He had the signature of his Saiyan status ripped away by a weakling and a coward. An important moment in bringing this fight to its end is the fact that Gohan's pure heart and Goku's willingness to sacrifice himself against Raditz both combined to allow for the Spirit Bomb to connect. The heroes are rewarded for being good people, and the story itself punishes Vegeta for being a bad person. Vegeta is ultimately rendered unable to fight just like Nappa, but unlike himself, Goku was merciful and begged Krillin to let Vegeta live. Krillin, as we all know, abiding by Goku's wishes and allowing Vegeta to escape. While Vegeta may have survived this encounter, something within him has changed. He's been outsmarted by mere Earthlings and overpowered by another Saiyan who by all rights had no business so much as being a challenging fight. And most importantly, he definitively lost the overall battle. Sure, Vegeta managed to physically beat Goku, and you could say that he won that battle, but Goku wasn't Vegeta's only opponent, and defeating him wasn't what he wanted out of that fight. He only began caring about that fight once his ego came into question. Vegeta came to Earth to wish for immortality on the Dragonballz, and Goku wanted to drive him off of Earth and stop him from getting his wish. Because Goku got what he wanted in the end, and Vegeta didn't, that makes the Z-Fighters the decided winners of this encounter. He may have beat Goku, but he was defeated by Earth. From Earth, Vegeta returns to the Frieza Force headquarters. He's been defeated, but most importantly, was given a glimpse at a better way of life. Throughout the Frieza saga, Vegeta is put in a far more humanizing light. He's still a villain at this point for sure, but this is where you can really start getting some insight into his actions. This is where we start to see a lot of what he's been made to endure as a slave to the Frieza Force. This Saiyan elite mindset is a reaction to and denial of his status as a lowly underling beneath Frieza. It absolutely does not justify his actions, but draws a clear line from life experience to action for the audience. Vegeta's race was enslaved by Frieza incredibly early on in his lifetime, forcing him to keep his head down and roll with the metaphorical punches. But after his fight against Goku, he begins this arc strangely more confident enough to finally fight back against his longtime oppressor, the Emperor of the Universe, Frieza. Throughout his journey on Namek, Vegeta fights his way through most of Frieza's army, resolving himself to team up with Gohan and Krillin if it means defeating him. Although the alliance is a shaking one, this is progress. Vegeta is nowhere near being a formal Z-fighter, as the truce he strikes with Gohan and Krillin is purely out of self-preservation on both sides. But after his humiliation on Earth, he's able to humble himself and accept the help of the Earthlings, something he would in no way have been able to do at any point in his life before this. When they finally do draw out Frieza himself, the fight is incredibly tough, but still seems within the realm of possibility. Until Frieza reaches his final form, that is, in which he makes a complete mockery of Vegeta, leaving him physically beaten and mentally broken. This is far and away the lowest moment in Vegeta's entire life. He was convinced that he could become the Super Saiyan and get revenge for his race once and for all, but he was wildly wrong, and the fact was relentlessly beat into him. In this moment, with Vegeta's mentality fully unraveled, he makes the best decision possible at this point, and he lets someone else take up the burden that he's been forced to carry since he was a child. He reaches out to another Saiyan for help. In this heartbreaking display of loss, and with no other options, Vegeta puts the weight of the Saiyan race that he's been made to carry for so long on the shoulders of the only person in the universe that can help him now. He puts his pride away and comes to terms with the fact that he is, in fact, not the Super Saiyan. Goku is. This is later confirmed when he's brought back to life and sees with his own eyes that Goku has become the legendary Super Saiyan, all while he was rotting in a shallow grave on an unfamiliar planet. This moment sticks with Vegeta, who now has to come to gripes with the fact that despite all his efforts, despite the fact that he spent his entire life with the singular goal of becoming the Super Saiyan to defeat Frieza, not only was he bested by another via a technicality on Earth, but he couldn't do so much as offer significant help in the final fight against the evil he's trained his whole life to defeat. He had to sit by on another planet entirely while the fight played out, and his dream of becoming the Super Saiyan was fulfilled by another. He decides to stay on Earth for the time being with Bulma, and there he stays until we see him next. About a year later, while still waiting for any sign of Goku's return from the planet Namek, Vegeta is once again confronted with a Super Saiyan, but this time, it's not Goku. Not only has a legendary Super Saiyan appeared before Vegeta, but a second, currently nameless Saiyan has shown up and is the first Saiyan in history to become a Super Saiyan at the same time as another exists. Not only is Vegeta not the first one to do it, he's not even the first one to do it second. At this point, Vegeta is now the only adult Saiyan in the universe, I'm ignoring Tarble, that isn't a Super Saiyan. Time after time in this story, Vegeta has had to confront the possibility that he's not the best, like he's always told himself he was, in order to get through the daily life in the Frieza Force. And now, he is staring face to face with living, breathing proof that he might actually be the worst. Vegeta, of course, does eventually become a Super Saiyan, but the impetus for his transformation comes from that feeling of mediocrity, from the frustration of being shown his weakness repeatedly, from how badly he wanted to best Goku, and from his need to prove that he wasn't wrong all of those years. He simply can't handle being shown up time and time again, as, due to his upbringing, his strength is all that matters to him. Watching Goku go from marginally stronger than his base form in short bursts to straight up defeating an enemy that had been haunting him his entire life, all while Vegeta was so far below Frieza that he died trying to combat him, left his ego in shambles. That ego death was on par in terms of emotional intensity to Goku watching his lifelong best friend killed permanently, and Trunks seeing the closest thing he had to a father figure and the only line of defense between him and the world-ending threat mutilated and murdered. This is what pride means to Vegeta. This is the importance that being the best has in his world. It's everything to him. Throughout the main story of the Cell Saga, Vegeta is something of a wild card. He fights on the side of the Z-Fighters pretty consistently, but he's still a deeply selfish individual and costs the team greatly for the sake of his pride. The instant that he gains a leg up on Goku, the true frailty of his personality is on full display for all to see. The display of overconfidence and arrogance that surrounds Vegeta's duel with semi-perfect Cell is a falsehood. Deep down, Vegeta knows that he's been bested by Goku, and becoming a Super Saiyan doesn't truly change that. As someone who hasn't learned any form of emotional maturity, the only way he can deal with that is putting on a show of confidence. If he can convince others that he thinks he's the shit, he might be able to convince himself that he thinks he's the shit. So despite his multiple failures in this arc, he keeps up that facade of self-assuredness and keeps himself at arm's length to keep the true emotion permeating this period of his life, weakness, to himself. Though along the ride on the roller coaster that is Vegeta's increasingly fragile ego is his son from the future, Trunks. As they spend more and more time together through the arc, particularly during their time training in the Room of Spirit and Time, Vegeta would never admit it, but he began to care for the boy, something not even he realizes until Trunks' untimely demise at the hands of Cell. Vegeta's tough exterior really starts showing the cracks here that began to form in his outbursts of rage during the Saiyan Saga, and his time on Earth is expediting that change within him. His personality has become so centered around becoming stronger than Goku, given the void that was left by Frieza's defeat, to the point that when Goku is made to sacrifice himself to save the world, Vegeta breaks. He gives up fighting entirely. He spent his whole life serving Frieza, indoctrinated into the army from an unfairly young age. He spent his days doing nothing but becoming strong enough to survive in this harsh world. I mentioned this earlier, but Dragon Ball Super reveals that Vegeta was actually somewhat of a Saiyan history buff, and as one of 3 living Saiyans that he knew of growing up, he had to survive by any means possible if the memory of the Saiyan race was to be kept alive. Then, after spending his whole life focusing on growing his own strength with the hope of one day taking down Frieza and restoring the Saiyans to their rightful glory, carrying the weight of the entire race on his shoulders, another Saiyan shows up out of nowhere who has the potential to surpass him, time and time again proving that he's superior until all Vegeta can do is direct that drive he once had to surpass Frieza and apply it to Goku. The emotional effort it would have taken to properly work through and move on past this incessant need to prove himself is just something that Vegeta doesn't have in him at this stage of his life. So in order to avoid acknowledging that he has failed, he directs these emotions towards Goku in the form of anger. But the big issue here is that when you really look at it, there is no justifiable reason for him to surpass Goku like there was with Frieza. At least with Frieza, he could pretend that it wasn't about validating himself, given how objectively evil Frieza is. But when it comes to the kind-hearted Goku who isn't suppressing his freedom or doing anything even close to the evil that Frieza was doing, he's forced to come to terms with the fact that this has been a facade the whole time. He's been hardened throughout his whole life to avoid doing the work to truly move on with his life. And this refusal manifests itself in the insecurity that fuels his overconfidence. But now that Goku is gone and Frieza is defeated for real this time, and there's no outstanding existential threats for now, for the first time in his life, Vegeta has nothing to strive for and has nothing to distract himself from confronting his emotions head on. 7 years later, Vegeta seems to have gotten used to his life on Earth, and while he still trains alongside his son of the present, Trunks, he's unfocused. He has this lingering feeling of unrest, incompleteness. He never really settled things with Goku, and the Prince of All Saiyans being reduced to a mere Earthling must have been incredibly humbling. This is where we find the once boisterous Prince of All Saiyans. Goku is allowed to return to the world of the living for the 25th World Martial Arts Tournament, and this lights a fire under Vegeta. He'll finally have the chance to prove once and for all that he is superior. It brings all those old insecurities right back to the forefront, and suddenly Vegeta once again has the chance to prove what he failed to time and time again, that his youth wasn't wasted chasing a lie. Unfortunately for Vegeta, the tournament is interrupted by a new evil emerging before he's able to finally settle his old duel with Goku. Not that he's gonna let that stop him. The villain that emerges, Babidi, offers Vegeta a deal. Babidi has the ability to grant an increase in strength at the cost of giving oneself over to his mind control. But Babidi has never encountered someone as strong as the Saiyans, and his mind control doesn't fully work on Vegeta, who simply takes the power boost and access to Super Saiyan 2 and uses it to goad Goku into another fight. Despite the fact that he's putting the lives of his family and all the other humans he's been living amongst at risk, this fight just means too much to Vegeta. No matter the outcome, he'll finally be relieved of the emotional turmoil that he wasn't equipped to deal with in the first place. There's a quote here that I think perfectly sums up Vegeta's entire character up to this point, and the reason that he makes these decisions. It goes as follows. "Meaningless, huh? What do you know of meaningless? Spend most of your life ruled by another. Watch your race dwindle to a handful, and then tell me what has more meaning than your own strength. I have in me the blood of a Saiyan prince. He is nothing but a joke, yet I have watched him surpass me in strength, my destiny thrown to the wayside. He's even saved my life as if I were a helpless child. He has stolen my honor, and his debts must be paid." Despite this outburst, and despite Goku clearly acknowledging how much this means to Vegeta, a man he claims to respect, Goku still decides to hold back. This fight, this answer is everything to Vegeta. He believes that the outcome of this fight is worth sacrificing the lives of all he holds dear. But from Vegeta's perspective, by holding back, Goku makes it clear that this is just another obstacle to overcome, that despite everything, despite throwing away his growing humanity, he still could not surpass Goku. And this time he didn't even come close. Vegeta realizes at the end of this fight that he doesn't really need this answer. He wishes he could be that man again. He wishes that he could have that hunger for battle once more, for no other reason than that was the last time he truly had a goal, a direction in life. It would be all so simple if he could just be that man again. But in his attempt to return to that way of thinking, he incidentally proves to himself that he has changed, that he has always been capable of evolving past that mindset, that he has always had the potential to be a hero. He just didn't have the right circumstances to know that he had that. He also realizes in this moment that he doesn't need to prove himself anymore. He has another reason to fight that he's been ignoring all this time: his family. This realization cuts through Vegeta as the magnitude of his actions settle in, and he understands that, short of defeating the villain outright, the only thing he can do to even begin to atone for the last day is to put everything he has into ending the horror that he's brought into the universe by allowing Buu to be revived. The rest of Vegeta's interactions through the Buu saga build on this realization of what is truly important to him, even allowing himself to fuse with Goku for what he thought at the time to be a permanent solution. This all culminates in Vegeta finally being able to admit a fact that has been staring him in the face since the day he was introduced. A fact that he spent a significant portion of his adult life denying, that Goku is in fact number one. And for once, he's okay with that. Throughout Dragonballz Z, Vegeta has gone from a character who was incapable of admitting when he was outmatched to comfortably acknowledging another as the best and understanding his own place as second best. In the land of the Kais, Vegeta takes the responsibility of the second strongest and buys time for the real best fighter to gather himself. Vegeta began as a ruthless killer who will do anything to confirm his mental status quo, and after the trials he was put through, he gained the emotional intelligence required to overcome his troubled past and look to the future with hope. In pretty much all canon material after the Buu saga, Vegeta settles into a pretty consistent characterization. And while I believe there is much more his character could be doing, as I do with most modern versions of Dragon Ball characters, Dragon Ball Super Vegeta isn't the unique train wreck that most fans would have you believe. While Vegeta still focuses on surpassing Goku, strangely obsessed at times, it's no longer his main focus. He's a family man through and through, and save for any imminent threat approaching, he's content to stay that way. He actually finds a very good balance between family life and genuine training, a habit that the most recent manga one-shot proves that Gohan has finally picked up, which is a fact that just made me so happy. Yes, Vegeta still obsesses over passing Goku in a way unbefitting of a character who could give that "you're number one" speech, and through most of Super he doesn't have a considerable amount of nuance. But I have recently come to a sort of understanding with Dragon Ball Super, and so I don't judge its faulty characterizations as harshly as I once did. Ultimately, I see Dragon Ball Super as more of a nice endpoint for the character, akin to a slice-of-life adaptation of Dragon Ball as opposed to a meaningful expansion of it. Yes, I would love to see Vegeta and the rest of the cast continue to evolve on their character arcs, and for him to be used in more interesting ways than just making the villain look super strong when they beat him, but that's honestly more of a critique of Super than of Vegeta's character itself, and the manga content that hasn't been adapted yet is a fairly nuanced, satisfying continuation of the character. The Moro arc of the manga gives Vegeta a chance for reflection on the man he used to be compared to the man he is now. During this arc, he visits New Namek and takes up the responsibility of protecting the Namekians as penance for the transgression he's made upon their race in the Frieza saga. He acknowledges that he has committed horrible, unforgivable atrocities for which he can never atone, but that won't stop him from trying his best. He's almost too self-deprecating, discounting the good that he's done ever since he fully turned to the good side. It's a really interesting turn to the character that I can see becoming meaningfully expanded upon in future manga content. For the first time since Buu, I can see clear effort to use Vegeta's character in an interesting way. I would put forth the argument that the Moro arc overall is a step in the right direction in terms of writing quality and depth. But then again, this is also the arc where Piccolo says Vegeta was never the type to underestimate his enemy, so baby steps. The Granola arc is where we leave Vegeta for now, as it's the most recent story arc to heavily feature him. During this part of the story, he taps back into his Saiyan battle instincts in the form of Ultra Ego. Using this form, he's able to grow stronger the more his fighting spirit increases, and because of that, he taps back into his villainous tendencies that he's been suppressing. Given his role as a father who nowadays only battles out of a sense of heroic responsibility, I can imagine that tapping back into this battle-hungry rage must feel like saying hello to an old friend, since this is a big part of Vegeta's life that he's been trying to cut off almost entirely. I really like this modern trend of Vegeta accepting that his past will always be a part of him rather than pretending it didn't happen. He's going to work towards meaningfully reflecting on who he once was and accepting that those parts of him still exist and using them for good. I love that direction. However, I do think that the way it was written in this arc was a little rocky. Honestly, it feels less like Vegeta is slipping into old habits to get an advantage or tapping into some latent thirst for battle that he's always had but is long suppressed. And the way it's presented just kind of makes it feel like Ultra Ego makes you an asshole, which, as far as I understand, isn't how it works. Regardless, this is still another clear attempt at laying the groundwork for genuine character work to be done moving forward without making the characters feel like the action figures that Super's currently animated content has done. I started this video thinking that I would have a lot more negative things to say about the way that Vegeta's character was being handled after Dragon Ball Z, but in reality, my main issues come down to one thing. Vegeta feels like an action figure of his Z self. Most characters in Dragon Ball Super feel like this less complex, easier to digest caricatures of what was most marketable about them in Dragon Ball Z, which honestly makes sense given that Dragon Ball Super is marketed toward a younger audience than Z was. I could say the exact same thing about how Goku feels like a silly, immature idiot when his character was far more mature and his battle IQ was heavily emphasized. I truly hope that these are issues of the past, and they seem to be. Dragon Ball Daima put a heavy emphasis on making Goku seem like the mature adult he always should have been once the cast became adults again. And the manga-exclusive content gives Vegeta new ground to cover as a character, which in my opinion is the department he's been lacking in the most. Also, I'm just gonna say it, Vegeta or Broly are gonna have to be the ones to kill Black Frieza, or I'm gonna be very disappointed in that arc. If he is killed, of course, because if he isn't, that can make way for an even more interesting ending. I feel like if they do go the direction of Frieza's death, it would have to be Vegeta, because that's gotta be the most satisfying way you could put that villain down for good. I really can't say it enough, I love Dragon Ball. I don't like critiquing it because there's just so much to enjoy about the series, but there are definitely times where, especially in a lot of the modern material, you can feel that there's less and less effort being put forth towards creating interesting characters. But the note that I want to leave this video off on is that strides are being taken in the right direction. Daima showcased not only the absolute best Dragon Ball has ever looked, but what modern material can really do with these characters. There's a lot more ground to cover, more than many people may think. There's plenty of fresh story arcs and character nuances that Dragon Ball has yet to explore, and if nothing else, I want this to serve as a reminder that people who genuinely care about the series, namely Toyotaro, are making sure that the best has yet to come. Thank you so much for watching. I love getting to talk about Dragon Ball so much. I say it every time, but rest assured, there's plenty still to say. First of all, I'd like to formally debut on this channel my new D&D actual play, Keep On Rollin'. I say new, but we have quite a few episodes out already. I just scheduled episode 10, and we're filming episode 11 in like 15 minutes. Please check it out whenever you're interested. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. There's a lot of things happening behind the scenes that have unfortunately kept videos a little inconsistent, but I'm trying out a new workflow for content creation that's a lot quicker to edit, and hopefully it'll be more sustainable too, since I want to start getting out more videos now that I have the chance. And I also just want to take this chance to say thank you again. I've been so fortunate to be able to get so much feedback on my videos. I've met some great people through YouTube, and I'll always be thankful for that. Shout out to Lunar Arts Gaming as always. Our weekly Baldur's Gate streams are some of the highlights of my week. I'll tag their channel below. They're a real one, so please check them out when you have the chance. Anyway, that's all for me today. Peace.